Washington County decision makers, where are the women? Part of Crossroads Change in Rural America. And I am Lisa Rutherford. I'll be moderating this discussion. And we're highlighting the topic of women in leadership and decision making in our fast growing, formerly rural and evolving community. Crossroads Change in Rural America offers small towns a chance to look back on their past and consider the changes that have occurred since then and give a little thought to where they're heading. We have a panel of women who come from diverse backgrounds. Pam Gardiol at the end is president of Gardiol Associates, serving public, private, and nonprofit organizations in Utah and the West Coast for 30 years. For 2 decades, she taught organizational management at 3 universities. She served 12 years on the Ogden City Planning Commission as chair and currently serves on the Ivins City Planning Commission. Kerry Kastler at this end is a native Utahn. She is the retired Chief Development Officer of Intermountain Health, Southwest Region, past chair of the St. George Area Chamber of Commerce, and the St. George Planning Commission. She has served on several nonprofit boards and contributed many opinion pieces to our local papers. Rachel Ramsay in the middle is Associate Professor of Digital Design at Utah Tech and creator of Girls Go Digital to enable young girls to have a positive, hands-on experience with technology and digital programming and help them feel comfortable in the university setting. She was named Apple Distinguished Educator Class of 2019, and she currently serves as STEM and eSmart Chair for our St. George American Association of University Women. So that's our panel for tonight. So let's set the stage for tonight's discussion. We're going to be covering the roles that women have filled in Washington County and elsewhere perhaps. Then we're going to go into the challenges that women have faced and still face. And we will look at the opportunities and the strategies that they have to face and have available. And then we hope to have a little time for questions and answers at the end. As our program title indicates, our focus is women in decision-making positions, but leadership also, more generally, at this crossroads in time. Here are some definitions to get us started. Crossroads we view as a situation that requires an important decision be made. Decision maker is one who is known as being primarily responsible for making decisions, and a leader is one who inspires others to action. We want women in both roles. And here's an example of the challenge we face. For the 8th consecutive year, Utah ranks worst when it comes to women's equality, and 45th place with a D grade when it comes to women's political representation. And Utah lags behind most states when it comes to women running for and serving in elected political roles. Our program's focus is the past 100 years, and during which Washington County has evolved from rural to more urban. And we've seen a lot of changes. In 1924, with a population of about 10,000, Washington County was a quieter place, less busy, lots of open space. Not that they didn't have their problems and challenges. But here, 100 years later, in 2024, with a population of about 200,000, there's a lot of traffic, a lot of visitors, a lot of growth, not so much open land, just a lot going on. During the 100 years and even before, many women exemplified leadership and decision-making roles. They weren't called leaders or decision makers. They provided models from which we can learn. The following poem by Emery Hall speaks to us about those women and who helped pave the way for those who have followed. Make peace with all the women you once were. Lay flowers at their feet. Offer them incense and honey and forgiveness. Honor them and give them your silence. Listen. Bless them and let them be, for they are the bones of the temple you sit in now, and they are the rivers of wisdom leading you toward the sea. Although the last 100 years is our focus, it's important to reflect on the roles of women even before that, and Doug Alder and Carl Brooks, in their book, The History of Washington County, tell us much about the roles that women had. Women's roles included directing the children in raising animals, gardening, processing food, rug making, spinning wool, carding cotton, sewing clothes, weaving, making soap, laundering clothes, preparing meals, engaging in endless other crafts, making lye from cottonwood ashes, baking powder from alkali, starch from potatoes, dye from plants, along with medicating and teaching family members, all while birthing an average of 9 babies. Alice Parker Isom was one example of many powerful women who had both domestic and business responsibilities. In 1885, after her husband died, Alice took over their store in Virgin while raising their children and managing investments. So women have been doing a lot when it comes to leadership and making decisions for a long time. The recognition just hasn't been there officially. We may not know most of the women on this slide, but many of us are familiar with Barbara Watson, who was a leader in the arts and medical community, and Juanita Brooks and Lynn Clark Brunson, who told us about women's lives through their words and their photography. More recently, however, we have seen women stepping into official leadership and decision-making roles. And I would be remiss to not mention the recent passing of our one and only Utah Attorney General, Jan Graham, who served from 1993 to 2001, following former Utah Attorney General Paul Van Dam, who is with us here this evening. Jan left a legacy that includes the Children's Justice Centers, and many lives have been affected for the better through that. Yet even with these inroads, we lack women in leadership roles, while 44% of Utah women are in the workforce, higher than the national average, and yet we lack representation in leadership roles. So let's turn to our panelists and ask them some questions. Who are the Washington County women who have shaped our quality of life? What characteristics do they model for our contemporary time? And why are their characteristics so important at this crossroads in time? Pam, will you look back and share your thoughts with us?
I'd be happy to. Let me say that in order to understand Washington County since 1924 forward, we must understand those who came before. And what I would like to do is start this evening by giving an acknowledgement. We acknowledge this ancestral homeland of the Paiute peoples. We respect the enduring relationship between this tribe and this land. We are grateful for the territory upon which excuse me, it chokes me up just thinking about it. We are grateful for the territory on which we gather today and we honor the Paiutes as the original stewards of this place.
Volume down a little bit. There you go. You're good.
Thank you. All right, so again, I said we can't understand this land without understanding those who came before. The native people, of course, and then those who came in the 1850s and the 1860s. Because those who were here in 1924 were the children and the grandchildren of those who came in the 50s and 60s, the 1800s. So what I'd like to do is tell you about two of those settlers, Mary Ann Catherine Gardiol Dalton and Dorothea Evers Iverson. Both are my ancestors. Both came from Europe. Dorothea came from Prussia, and Mary Ann came from the northern Italian Alps. They came alone. They didn't speak the language. The process to get here was not a jet on 8-hour flight, but rather quite an ordeal. Talking about characteristics, whatever generation we are, we inherit the characteristics of integrity from those who came before. And so I'd like to tell you about 5 of the characteristics of my 2 grandmothers. First of all, they embraced the possibility of the unknown and the unseen. There was no internet to tell them about what they would find in Washington County, but they believed in why they were coming. Secondly, they had the nerve to face their fears. Homesick, poverty, and coming to a place where they didn't speak the language. Have you ever felt, even though we all speak English, that sometimes you'd swear we are not speaking the same language? Yeah. Third, they were problem solvers. They grew crops in this heat, and this red sand that was foreign to them from Prussia and Italy. They spoke and interacted with the native people to care for their families, their communities, and the land. 4, they were tenacious and perseverant. Dorothea's home was in Washington on the banks of the Virgin River, and it flooded one night. And she gathered her 7 children. She only had 7, not 9. She gathered her 7 children and some bedding and her husband, and they scampered to the highest spot they could find to endure the night and the river. In the morning, there was not 1 stone left of their home. So she started over. Number 5, they were resourceful. They found ways to navigate a social structure that said that men were important and women, well, were not. They banded together to get their ideas implemented. Okay, so the next question is, why are these characteristics important for this crossroads in time? The courage to embrace the possibility of the unknown and the unseen. Women have a gift for seeing what needs to be done and brings people together to find the solutions and includes everyone in the process. They had the nerve to face their fears. We women acknowledge our fears, and then we do what we have to do. If our own feelings of inadequacy or the socialization that relegates us to less than, countless of our peers and our role models have had the nerve to do it anyway. Problem solvers, we're collaborative by nature. We see the complexity of the situation, and we ask the insightful questions that need to be asked to address these issues. Washington County is changing radically. The time with only 5,000 people in the entire county is gone. And the entire landscape is changing. politically, economically, socially, health-wise, every landscape you want to imagine. And I am reminded of the quote from Chief Seattle, who said, "We do not own the land, we borrow it from our children." Why do we need women in leadership positions? Because we understand that. Number 4, tenacity and perseverance. Marianne and Catherine had a vision, Marianne and Dorothea had a vision of something better for themselves and for their children. The question that women often ask is, what is our vision that ties us to the call to lead, whether it is a political office or it is doing something in the neighborhood, wherever there are opportunities to lead. Number 5, resourcefulness. Women physiologically think simultaneously with both sides of our brain. We are masters at working through and around and over barriers. We anticipate alternative plans before we even take the first step because we know there will be a barrier. Our agility and innovation means that never before have women been needed in leadership in Washington County.
Kerry. You're up.
I thought I was last. All right.
No.
I'd like to focus on 2 Washington County women, one of whom I never met, and one with whom I was very fortunate to have met and over time engaged with regularly as a role model and a friend. And I see 2 of her good friends, Carmen Snow and Kathleen Gubler. That's you guys back there. Juanita Brooks, American historian and noted well-known educator, will be my first pick. A woman who in the mid-1900s, at great risk to herself, authored the now famous Mountain Meadow Massacre. Juanita ventured where few others dared tread, armed by the desire to tell the truth about one of the ugliest chapters in the history of the American West that exposed the truths of the heartbreaking crossroads between Mormon pioneers and an immigrant wagon train. More than 120 would lose their lives. I feel sure, Brooks wrote in her preface, that nothing but the truth can be good enough for the church to which I belong. You see, the slightest misstep could cause significant collateral damage, namely to her standing in the church, the LDS Church, also to her career as an esteemed educator, and finally to her relationships with many local community members, many of whose ancestors were a part of the bloodshed in the massacre. Yet amid the controversy surrounding Juanita, she did more than just write books and educate others. She also raised a family, including a son who was mentioned by Lisa, Carl Brooks, who would be elected as mayor of St. George and also as administrative vice president of what is now UTEC. Through it all, Juanita would remain a member in good standing of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I think you can agree that Juanita dared to face the crossroads. When I was a young new employee at Dixie Regional Medical Center, now Intermountain Health, a woman named Barbara Watson was its governing board chair. Like Juanita, Barbara successfully balanced work at the family pharmacy, civic engagement, and raising a family. Barbara's leadership surprised and inspired me. In a management world of nearly exclusively men, here was this composed, intelligent woman who knew the keystones of hospital administration, and who was persuasive in sharing the need and the dream for a new hospital for our growing community, that now multi-building complex on the corner of Four Master Drive and River Road. How fortuitous was her personal courage to step forward to lead St. George into a future it now enjoys. Few of us in this room can argue the appeal of the hospital and the healthcare resources she helped forge in St. George. Barbara had an innate ability to combine charisma and chutzpah, something few people can do. Men, not all of you, but many lack charisma, and women so often shy away from chutzpah. But Barbara Watson had both.
Thank you, Kerry. Rachel, you ready to share your thoughts on roles, or would you prefer to go to a different?
The one thing that I would like to say is that my perspective is a little bit different as someone who maybe didn't see these people, but actually the experience of meeting with these women and hearing their experience has made me understand a lot more of the underlying strength that women have had in Washington County and the things that they have done. So it helps me feel secure in the basis for what needs to happen moving forward. My family is from Southern Utah, and I've been here for quite a while, and I can't say that in business or even in leadership here at the university that I see a lot of women who are what you would deem quote unquote a leader or a decision maker, and I think that my perspective is that the people that are making the decisions and who could be the good leaders need to have their opportunity to get recognition for that. So that's what I'd like to say about it. So
Okay. Thank you. So it's clear that there are a lot of role models, past and present, that women can turn to, and to help women as they continue to perhaps seek leadership and decision-making roles. But what are the challenges that women face now? As noted, we have a higher percentage of women in our workforce, but lack that in our leadership roles. And how does that disparity look at our decision-making roles? Oops. So at the city council level, most of the seats are filled by men. At our Washington County Commission level, all of the 3 seats are filled by men. And our Washington County representation in the Senate, Utah Senate and House, both seats are filled by men. Utah ranks 40 out of 50 states when it comes to legislative seats held by women. Our neighbors Nevada, Colorado, and Arizona are doing far better than we are. And this is how it looks at the city levels in Washington County. As you can see, in the mayoral ranks, women are doing pretty well. They hold 55% of the seats. But when it comes to the council seats and the planning commission seats where the real decisions are made, that percentage drops drastically. And if you look again down at the bottom, when we look at the State House and the State Senate for our Washington County representation, again, no women, and the Washington County Commission, no women. So let's turn to our panel again and ask some questions about the challenges that women face. Oh, there we go. Okay, what challenges do today's women face when taking on greater leadership positions? how can women manage these challenges when they lack power? And how do we use the lessons from the past to deal with the current challenges at this crossroads in time? So let's turn, Rachel, you get to go first.
Well, I think I spoke a little bit about the challenges. My experience has been varied in southern Utah. I grew up here, and I've done several different things, owning businesses, having employees, and my perspective also is a little bit unique as a single woman in the business world. And some of the challenges are some preconceived notions or expectations of how business should be conducted. One thing that sticks in my mind is I was getting ready to open a store, and I had a lease that was a pretty expensive lease that I was going to sign and make a commitment, and I hired a lawyer in town to review the lease with me. And the first thing that he asked me when I went to meet with him is, are you sure that you don't need your husband or your father here to help look at this lease? And I was in my 30s at the time, and that kind of shocked me. And running into those little things that start to wear on you. I think that I grew up in a family that taught me that I could do whatever I want and be whatever I want, and that education was important. And the challenges are being able to counter those messages that you're receiving. And so it's kind of like a slow kind of like wearing away at you as you're doing that. And I think part of what I think is important to help manage that is to be vocal about it, to find allies, and allies both men and women, and not people that are virtue signaling, that are saying that they support women, but do they really support women? Do they encourage women to do the work and then take credit for that work? And so I think that managing those challenges is trying to sort out who real allies are, and who to trust, and how to leverage those things. And I think the lessons of the past might be that women have been fighting these fights and been trying to make a difference. And now, for me, I believe it's important that we step out from behind that and it's the whole reason I started the Girls Go Digital program wasn't necessarily to have a bunch of girls become computer programmers. It was have a bunch of girls who felt like they could do anything and have the same access and hands-on ability. If as long as they felt like they could approach any situation and be successful at it, regardless of their gender or access or resources. And I think that the women of the past did that. But I think there's a lot of power in seeing someone like yourself who is being successful and having those opportunities, and knowing that if you do have a little chutzpah, that there's going to be people that are there to back you. So.
Great. Yeah. Kerry, you want to follow up on that?
Sure. Utah as a whole, and most certainly Washington County, has long been a patriarchal society. Indeed, the majority of the world has been and still is wrestling to moderate the predominance of patriarchy. While patriarchy is slowly diminishing, Utah's patriarchy has three strong arms: that of culture, that of history, and that of a predominant religion. When a strong faith, such as that rooted in Utah, does not fully accept or integrate women into primary leadership roles, women will literally be sitting in the audience rather than speaking at the pulpit. In other words, if you're not at the table, probably in the menu. Regrettably, this straps girls and women with the perception that women not only don't have equality with men, and I think we all know equality, but neither do they have equity with them, as Lisa's slide illustrates. This isn't just a Utah thing. Without question, as I noted, it is worldwide. Young girls are not adequately socialized to expect leadership in their careers, in their politics, and in their religion. That means they never have an expectation of leading the most influential and sacred aspects of life as we know it. Rather, those called to lead the religions many look to for guiding them in the most trying of times are only men. So if women aren't called by God, who will call them? Women's rights progress has shown that it is women themselves, like Juanita, Barbara, and those of you perhaps in this room who must envision and generate the call to action. As Gloria Steinem, and I think most of you are old or young enough to know who Gloria is, she is now 90 years old. She famously said, "Without leaps of imagination or dreaming, we lose the excitement of possibilities." Dreaming, after all, is a form of planning. And we remember to access or remember across the generations that there is as much to learn as there is to teach. A feminist is anyone who recognizes the full equality and equity in humanity of both men and women. Gratefully, many faiths have now restructured and empowered women to accept leadership roles, and some women have stepped up to empower themselves, and in so doing provided some strong examples for those who would follow. One of my most revered and beloved is Mother Teresa. But more recently, we have the young Palestinian, Malala Yousafzai, who was, did I say that wrong?
She's Afghani.
Oh, thank you. The young Afghanistan woman. I'm so sorry. No, I'm glad you corrected me. She was shot as she rallied for the right of women to be educated. Did I get that part right? Imagine if you could never step foot in this building or on this campus. Would you take action like Malala? Gratefully, Malala lived through being shot, and she would go on to say some very notable things like, "There is a moment when you have to choose whether to be silent or to stand up. And if one man can destroy everything, why can't one girl change it?" I want a world where men and women engage their talents together, equitably and equally, to build a stronger, more creative and resilient world and future. A future that empowers and embraces the success of everyone. Everyone who will reach out toward the betterment of humankind. Finally, women, ask not for power over men. Ask for power over yourself. I hope I'm done. Well, I will be, regardless.
You good? You good? Pam?
You've heard from my esteemed colleagues about some of the issues that are foundational and a part of our society that we're still dealing with. I want to share two that are very alarming to me, because we are dealing with the pipeline of young women in our society that are not being prepared for what lies ahead. First is the, as we've discussed, the institutional and societal sexism and discrimination that are built into social beliefs, behaviors, and processes. I do a lot of work with diversity. And so when I'm working with a client and we're looking at their organizational environment, often, which is the case for all of us, they are not even aware of the biases that exist. The same thing with marginalization of females that is done by very good men and women, not even aware that we are doing it. And it is a part of every aspect of our lives. But the one thing that I want to point out, perhaps some of you listened over the weekend to the Hidden Brain episode interviewing Dr. Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist, profound writer. And so I'm quoting from some of his work. Increasingly, we are creating a more violent and misogynistic society, comfortable with slander and hatred and the pernicious use of the social media. This is also coming from Nicholas Kristof's article in the New York Times last week. And the use of AI. You can pull up his article. I won't take the time. But how AI is being used, in the article he talks about a young 14-year-old girl called to the counselor's office and was told that online some of the boys in the school had gotten a picture of her and jury-rigged it and of other girls and showed them being raped. This is the society that we are going into, and how do we create an environment where girls feel safe thinking about leadership when they're looking at survival? Dr. Haidt also talks in his interview that the statistics are that preteen girls and boys are spending 6 to 8 hours a day on their smartphones, and the teens 8 to 16 hours a day, which pushes out everything else. And Rachel can talk more to that. And the phrase, and it's true of every one of us in this room as it is teenagers, and that we are raising generations with continuous partial attention. How do we create girls and women of any age when we're focused halfway on our phones and sort of on whatever's going on in the conversation? He also talks about psychological motivations, which are true of all of us. There are two of them. One is agency, and that is the desire to be a force. Boys pretty much are socialized to be the force. The other one is communion, the desire to belong and be connected. Where do girls go? And Dr. Haidt says that that social media understands this, and that they hook the preteen girls. And we have to, how many likes do we have? How are we approved? And he talks about statistics showing anxiety and suicide, and not that any case of anxiety or suicide is appropriate, but he likened it to a hockey stick, and that it was going along at one level, and then at about 2013 and 14 with social media, it shot up. We're looking at the pipeline of who our leaders are going to be moving into the next generation. And so what is it that we do? We understand these things, and we pay attention to where are the ways in which we push back, and that we mentor young women and girls and make them feel that they are safe and that they matter. We have a crisis, not only for the women in our society, but for all of us.
Thank Thank you. Well, we have covered the roles and we've definitely covered the challenges, and now we need to look at opportunities. So research reveals that providing opportunities to women not only benefits them, but the organizations, the cities, the towns in which they work. In fact, by holding women back, these entities are holding themselves back, holding back their own potential. Clearly, women filling roles that have been traditionally seen as male roles is not a zero-sum game. Women and men both benefit from that diversity. So let's take a look at this. It says communities and organizations thrive when men and women serve in equal numbers in leadership roles, and the lack of diversity hinders organizations, just as I said. So let's turn once more to our panelists and hear what they have to say about opportunities and challenges. And Kerry, will you lead us off with this portion?
Yes.
Let's look at this thing. Why is it important to have women in leadership roles? What substantive strategies can we use to build and help them? That's okay. I was slow. And then what can we do individually and collectively to put women in these leadership roles? You didn't come up, I called you.
Well, I thought so, and I thought. Okay, opportunities and strategies bring to mind a historical quote by Louisa May Alcott that endures, I think, into our current time. She said simply, "I am not afraid of storms, for I am learning to sail my ship." But once your sail is unfurled and your keel firmly in your grip, you must seize the opportunity to chart your course, or you may find yourself without a destination. I have to confide that I am one of those people who ascribe to the thought that life is just 5 or 6 days that change everything else. Think backward or forward in your own life and in your mind and identify those days. For me, at 70, those days are easier to cite. The day I graduated university. For many, especially women, this is a game changer. I didn't recognize the significance of that achievement at the time, but I certainly do now. If you've earned a degree, I certainly hope you celebrate that triumph. For me, another one of those days was when I moved from Salt Lake City to what was then rural St. George. Fortunately, I found a job, but not just any job, a job that would be a 30-year career. And that career would eventually lead me to the executive suite of Intermountain Health in our region. But in my early years, I wasn't all that convinced I could succeed because my initial job was definitely not first on everyone's list, especially not the men. It was the job of raising donations to help build such resources as the hospital, the Jubilee homes, charitable lodging facilities for those who had to travel to receive critical care, and Lifeline helicopter. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't even imagine making a cold call to ask for $100 for our Jubilee of Trees. So how in the hell would I be able to ask for $1 million if I couldn't even ask for 100? Gratefully, I had learned the ability to dream of a better future, and I learned to share that dream, to identify other dreamers who then together raised more than $25 million for local health care. My message then becomes one with Gloria Steinem: seize the opportunity to dream, to envision a better future, and then share that dream until it resonates with others, even if it's just one person at a time. I have a dream, said Martin Luther King. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will be able to sit down at the table of brotherhood and be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Martin Luther King seized opportunities. Sadly, not all those days that change everything else in your life are triumphs, but I know from experience that you can make them so. Let me add some of my trials. The day I gave birth to a special needs daughter. The day I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And the day, not quite a year ago, that my 68-year-old husband died unexpectedly. We may not like the cards we are dealt, but it's how we play those cards that matters. So I share with you in any way that you can, strategize to make those trials into triumph. My trials are not unique. They are shared by many who came before me and many who will follow. What I've learned is that those who share your trials can be a comfort to you. And more importantly, you will find that you can be a comfort to them. And in so doing, soothe yourself. Seek and gain strength from others. And in this forum today, I'm mainly referring to women. Women of all ages. Women who have helped drive and will help drive equality and equity forward. Women who are looking for paths and strategies upward. And young women who must be mentored to carry the mantle forward. Learn to recognize your opportunities, even if you must invent them out of what you may see as nothing. Learn to step forward and don't be afraid to take the lead. When I was elected chair of the St. George Area Chamber of Commerce, I wondered, what on earth is this chamber thinking? What did I know about leading a Chamber of Commerce Board of Trustees? Well, I learned really fast that we had to have a speaker for our annual banquet. And that speaker needed to be someone who would draw a crowd and hopefully one who could cast a bright light on our still young chamber. Together we set our sights on Gordon B. Hinckley, who at that time was the prophet of the LDS Church. Let me tell you, he did draw a crowd, and we did raise the profile of our organization. But it's not about President Hinckley or Carrie Bird. It's about you. What dreams do you have for yourself, for women, for St. George, and for our future? Always, the future will follow the past and the present. Let's make sure we play the cards we are dealt well.
So I've been sitting here kind of thinking about that and about this circumstance and the stark difference in maybe how I might feel, and I think that it's fascinating to see how we approach things, how that tends to affect how we feel about it and where we're going with it. And you may have noticed that I've been sitting this whole time, and me noticing that these ladies get up and they project and they want to let you know what they're saying, and they believe what they're saying, and I think that, I mean, I guess I'll stand up right now because I'm going to give myself a minute to talk. I kind of feel like I talk all day as a teacher, but I think the true leadership roles, because I think that there's a lot of women who do have perceived leadership, but can they really affect the change? I look at my personal circumstances, and I look at, and maybe it's because I'm in the trenches right now that I feel a little bit differently about it, but I think that feeling like you're being believed, and I think that there's a lot of power in the generation that maybe has kind of been able to like step back and look and reflect. And I think that there's a lot that could be said to how they might be able to be mentors and to be able to support those that are in the trenches, because I think it's continuing, and we all know it. And I think we've had multiple conversations where we all know the situation, and now I think that there's people my age and younger who want to do something really proactive about it, and the people that maybe have the security to be able to put themselves out there without having it negatively impact their ability to earn or their ability to progress. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of power in that, and so I think some of those strategies might be to hear when people are speaking, to be able to support them in those times. I see a lot, speaking to children, and I say children makes me feel so much older than I feel like I am, but
You don't know anything yet.
yeah, right. But teaching students right now, and seeing some of the issues that are happening and how they have a carefully curated life where something that they're interested in is fed to them over and over to excess, and they don't have experience with other things and other people. And one of the main things I teach design, but the process of design being user-centered or person-centered, and really learning how to empathize with those people that you're designing, whether it's a system, a product, a flyer, whatever those things are. And it's really hard to get students these days to think about someone outside of their own sphere and their own understanding. And these ladies have been very kind to me in being patient with my schedule, and I think it's been kind of exhausting even this semester, just feeling like you have to kind of drag students over the finish line, and part of that is because of the fact that they don't know what they don't know. And I wonder how much maybe we're sitting on our laurels, allowing them to not know those things, and maybe we just need to be more forthright and vocal about that, saying, no, there is a different perspective, and there are 7 billion other people on this planet, and all of them are valuable, and all of them have something worth saying, and contributing, and it's, I think it starts like incrementally, like one by one, and with a small group that's here, and I think the strategies there are to, like, if you think that maybe you can do something, do something. If you see you can support somebody, and there's a lot of really wonderful people and women in this community that I've had the opportunity to be associated with through the AAUW and those organizations, and I'm just wondering how we can connect. Maybe it's because you guys are outside of that focus, and so how can we like yank people outside of their phones and their devices and their carefully curated lives to be able to see what else is there. And I think that, I don't see it happening unless people were willing to help the younger generations see that there's so much more than what they're being served every day. And to think about it, it feels kind of exhausting, so maybe it's just like one at a time. I don't know, that's kind of my thinking that way, so.
It's 8 o'clock now, so we have reached the end of our hour, and just letting you all know, if you have to be someplace, you're welcome to leave, but if you want to stay and we'll finish up, then that's fine too.
I'll abbreviate my remarks. I'm the organizational management person, and so I always look at what are the root causes of the issues, and that we start there. And Rachel, what you have just talked about, the interdependence of any system, and a society as a system, means that we don't reach the point in our life where we say, well, I've paid my dues, and now I'm just going to do my thing. And I want to give you this quote from James Clear. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your system. A society is a system, and a system is a collection of interdependent parts. The key word, interdependent. And so, Rachel, you have laid down the gauntlet that we need to be more involved within our community. If we want leaders in our community, we are they. And we mentor and look for opportunities. Walking onto campus today, just to this building, every young man who walked past me made eye contact, and we nodded. Every young woman, when I was looking straight at her, did not. Every one. And so in each case, I would say, hello. Do we reach out beyond our own environment? Or because we will, like Marianne and like Dorothea, we are leaving a legacy. What is the legacy we want? My mother died a few years ago at 97 when the other presidential election was just happening. A member of the greatest generation, and she said, watching that one, what is going to happen to my country? Well, what is going to happen to ours is dependent on what each of us does. You want to know who the women leaders in Washington County are? Look at the person sitting next to you, because we are they. And so I'm going to abbreviate my remarks, but I do want to say that each one of us must honestly ask ourselves, do we have the nerve to mentor another woman and another guy every day? We are creating the kind of society we will have. We must answer the call to lead, for the challenge of being a role model in this county rests with each of us. And I quote the late John Lewis, make good trouble.
Thank you for your thoughts on opportunities and strategies. And I do want to say that there are strategies that can be employed, and I want to share a few from the status of women leaders in government. They suggest partnering with higher education, especially encouraging women to get Masters of Public Administration degrees. Implement policies, especially child care, to help women because child care is such a burden and holds them back from reaching their full potential. Encourage and support women candidates. Reward women for their work. Equal pay. If a woman is doing a man's work, she should be paid the same. And encourage leaders to draw from a broader labor pool and use that diversity for their good. Now, we have gone over our time, and those of you who want to talk and ask more questions, we can do that. And we've covered a lot of information during this hour, but we've only touched the surface of this really complex issue. I want to thank our panelists for sharing their insights and their time, and also to thank the organizations who sponsored this event. It's clear that there are many roles that can be used to help the women and many opportunities, although there are challenges. And I think that the future does look bright for young women who are willing to take on these challenges and really put themselves out there and learn. I've seen a lot of progress during my life, and this is not about putting others down so that women can move ahead. It's about how to use our differences to complement one another and forge a better future. And we encourage women and men to be involved and help forge this future and support organizations such as Utah's Women Leadership Project, Boulder Way Forward, the American Association of University Women, and other organizations. But organizations are not, they are important, but they're not the only thing we need. We need to create a responsibility on the part of all of us to find ways to empower the half of our society that has not been able to effectively take their place at the decision-making table. There are handouts back on the back table. We encourage you to stop by and take some, please. And we encourage you to be the change that you wish to see in the world. And thank you again for coming and spending your evening with us.